Hello, everyone. Welcome to this new webinar. Today, we're here with attorney Ruby Powers from Powers Law Group, and we're going to talk about what happens if you overstay your visa. So Ruby, she's a board-certified immigration nationality attorney, and she has been licensed since 2008 and founded the firm in November of 2009. So Ruby, the word is yours.
Thanks, Maria. So hopefully you're not in this situation, but we do have a lot of experience in this, and we'll go ahead and walk you through some of the different parts to know. So what is a visa overstay? So it's when you overstay in the US longer than your visa allows. Now, generally, it can get a little complicated, but in the most simplistic terms, the very simplistic terms, we could look to the I-94 form. There is a thing called the electronic I-94, and you can put in, let me just Google like electronic I-94, and then it'll ask you to put in your passport information, name, passport number, and you'll be able to generally be able to find it. If you entered a long time ago, probably not. I feel like that's less than maybe 5-6 years, but sometimes they surprise you and have some old data there too. So sometimes there's exceptions to this, and sometimes you don't have an I-94, but this is like a good way to start. If you've overstayed, definitely have a consultation immediately with somebody, or you think you're about to overstay or something's about to happen. Talk to an immigration attorney. Don't skimp on this, like really have a plan, because there could be some really detrimental issues if you overstay. Determine if you might be eligible for a waiver or need a waiver, and try to just don't overstay as much as possible, or minimize the damage, and definitely stay calm, but plan it out. I've had some people come to me and they like read their visa wrong or their passport wrong, or I don't know what it was. And so just really make a note about how long your time is. And it also can get confusing for and sometimes in employment-based space, where the face of the visa, it says it's good for many years, but the I-94 is for less. Or what also I see when people get confused is if they have let's say a 10-year B2 and a visa, right? It doesn't mean you get to stay in the US the 10 years. It means that the validity of allowing you to have a visa is during that time. But when you come to the US, you're generally only given 6 months at a time for the B2. And sometimes if they see you come a lot to the US and been here, then they will give you less time. So back in April 1st, 1997, they created this thing called unlawful presence. And so generally when you're not in the status, you're creating unlawful presence. Generally, there's some exceptions. And so if you overstay more than 180 days in the US, and then you leave, you trigger a 3-year bar that you have to wait out before you can come back in with a visa or that's valid. And then if you overstay more than a year and you leave, you can't come back for 10 years unless you get a waiver. And so there's lots of different little nuances and confusions about this. You know, sometimes if you're under 18, you're not accruing unlawful presence, but that doesn't stop you from accruing it for the permanent bar. So anyway, if you overstay, that generally can keep you from getting the ESTA or applying for a new visa. You definitely need to tell the truth, because if they find that you didn't tell the truth, then they can ding you with misrep and then misrepresentation or fraud, and then there is no time elapsed for that. You really need a waiver for that, and it doesn't go away with time. So what are valid reasons? This was really common during the pandemic when people, for lack of a better word, like got stuck in the US because they were on a trip and then they couldn't leave. So in those situations, we did extensions. There could be natural disasters in your home country, bereavement, something happened. So, the big key point is, if there's a good enough reason, like do act quickly, have proof, and try to minimize the damage. The more quickly you file, the more evidence you file, the more likely that USCIS will be okay with it. But there's a lot of discretion. So if a person, okay, this is not a like a black and white type of like everything here is fine. Like this is just some things to consider. If a person is an immediate relative and they entered one time legally, they overstayed and they have a visa immediately available and they are an immediate relative, they could adjust here. So even if they had some overstay, that still could be like waived and it's fine. Asylum seekers can, that gets a little complicated, but if there's some situations where that's still fine, but you really are focusing on applying within the 1 year. Victims of crime, the U visa can have a waiver for this. Victims of domestic violence as well, and victims of trafficking, there's waivers for that. Youth, like special immigrant juvenile, the amnesty, but that's if you were here since January 1st, 1972. Cancellation of removal is an immigration court, we call it 42B. Adjustment of status in court if you have if you are a immediate relative. So little nuances here, things to consider, not saying this is the answer to everything. So it could be possible to extend your visa. We have done nunc pro tunc, fancy word for basically putting you back to a certain date, back whole to a certain time. And so if you had applied late or you were doing something else, you were waiting for another answer for something, you can sometimes apply nunc pro tunc and go backwards in time so that if it's approved, and we've done this a lot, can give you that security that it's not going to be unlawful presence and it's not going to be out of status. Because honestly, it's not just unlawful presence waiver and inadmissibility and all that. If you also need to be watching out for other inadmissibilities like working illegally, with those types of things if you're trying to later be in a non-immigrant status. So anyway, just wanted to give you, there is some glimmer of hope, but try not to be in the overstay the visa basket place, and try to be proactive. There's lots of ways to reach us, 713-589-2085, our website. We've got several attorneys. We speak Spanish, English, Ukrainian, Russian. We got some translators in Turkish, French, or Portuguese, and other languages. You can find us on X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Follow us. We have a newsletter in English and Spanish every other week, with all the late breaking news and what's relevant. And so we've covered a lot in March: alternatives to H-1B, 589, victims of crime, and options for green card without leaving the United States. So definitely can stay in touch, share this video with others, and we'll see you next time.